Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another video. Today's a little bit of a different video. Recently, I've been really getting into reading comic books, and I thought, why not use this as an opportunity to make pretty much my own comic book series sort of reviews. So, where better to start than with the DC Universe? And that is with Grayson. Super Spy meets Superman. Grayson is a really interesting comic book, in my opinion, because it takes a different sort of turn. It starts off reminding us of how Dick Grayson used to be one of the former Robins, but then it catches us up later down the line on the premise of Dick Grayson returning to Gotham as pretty much a super spy rather than being Nightwing. On this new journey of self discovery, Dick Grayson finds himself in a city full of thugs. All these city thugs seem to be coming after him, knowing exactly who the secret super spies are supposed to be, one of the ex Robins. As he goes tumbling through the city, he ends up finding himself coming into contact with Superman. But not Superman in the same way he remembers him from back in the day. It turns out that Superman has lost half of his powers due to an overuse of the powers. The only remnants of Superman's powers now is that he can jump, and so Dick Grayson and Superman find themselves running and charging through the city. But the problem is there's not just goons, there's also people for hire, and the bounty hunters are closing in from all directions. What can the two superheroes do, and how will they be able to achieve it? As the story progresses, Dick Grayson and Superman confide in each other, explaining the fact that they both have had a hard score to settle, one being from Krypton coming down to Earth and having to fit in, and another being pretty much demanded of by Batman to become one of the greatest superheroes ever known. Whilst trapped down in a basement, Dick points out the fact that he's always been very resentful of his role in the events he's played in. He doesn't like the fact that he's always felt like he's had to one up Batman, be better than Batman. But Superman points out to him that maybe him not being Batman is one of the best things about him. How can you live up to a hero who skulks in the dark when sometimes that hero doesn't know where not to cross the line? Clark also points out the fact that Batman himself obviously didn't just choose Dick because of the fact that he wanted another Robin. He chose him to keep himself to the mark, as he knows that Dick Grayson will do anything in his power to become better than the night crime vigilante. Back to the problem. Time is running out, and Dick Grayson and Superman have very few places left to run. After destroying the Super Cycle, or as it's had many names, out by Superman, it turns out that they've had to crash one of the bikes. They end up down in a basement, and whilst they're walking around, skulking around, they know that there's only one way out, and that is to use a drone. But who could be behind this drone, and who will Superman get them to call upon? Well, none other than tech genius Lex Luthor. Dick Grayson is absolutely appalled by the fact that Superman would even consider confiding in Lex's help. But Superman points out to him without Lex's help, they will not escape this, and they will be trapped forever, just waiting to be attacked from all angles. Lex, of course, agrees to help, knowing full well that the only reason that Superman must have called him is because he's down on his luck. Lex has always criticised both Superman and Dick Grayson, calling one of them a circus act and another one a phony hero from out of space, an unreliable tyrant, a god amongst men. Lex turns up and gives the woman upstairs a call, explaining exactly where Dick Grayson and Superman's position is. But, of course, he points out, although he does have the opportunity and the power and the motive to rat Superman and Dick Grayson out, he really just can't be bothered, and he knows that he's going to find more fun in slaughtering all the goons and pretty much anyone who's trying to attack Dick Grayson and Superman, knowing that eventually it will bring Superman one step closer to being on Lex's doorstep once again. Then we have a flashback at the end of the comic, which goes back to the time when Batman pointed out that he didn't trust Superman. Robin never quite understood this. He always kind of looked up to the Man of Steel. He saw him as a sign of hope, a sign of pretty much that people can be capable of change and being able to make a difference in a world that always seems to be against each other and all its people. Time is always the biggest thief, and no one knows it more than Batman. But Robin also knows it, and he feels like Batman sometimes just needs to give people a chance rather than seeing the worst in people. So, what did I think of Grayson Super Spy meets Superman? Oh, honestly, I love this comic. I love the idea of teaming Superman and Dick Grayson up. It's a change of pace from some of the other comics I've been reading recently, and I really feel like their connection and their kind of moral compass is very similar. It makes it easier to understand why Dick wants to be the way he is, and the fact that he is definitely shown in this comic he is capable of doing more. And I really like though that there's that like touching scene in this comic book where Superman kind of has to reassure him, "Look, Dick, you're doing your best, mate." And Dick's constantly like rattling on to him about what Batman's like, and that is what makes this comic book so good to me. And for that reason, I give it a solid 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next comic book review. Until then, goodbye, stay beautiful, you gorgeous people.